Listen, nobody's getting a piece of this, okay? Yeah. I'm just telling you right now.
You
what the heck? This is really, really messed up. There's probably going to be people who don't like this statement.
Welcome back to another Heart to Heart with Dane and Sam.
Is that what this is called now?
Actually, yeah, because I got lots of comments that were like, I really enjoyed listening to Dan, and like they said that they really liked listening to you and that you were very like well spoken and like you had a lot of good things to say, like good insight. And then they did comment that they liked the way you like looked at me and smiled the whole time I was talking. I was like endearing.
The fact that people think I'm well spoken.
You are. You are.
It's pretty awesome.
No.
And comical.
No, Dan really is. Like you see the humorous side of him, like cooking Japanese and like painting my nails and stuff. But you are very well spoken. And I tell this to like so many of my friends and family. Like Dan missed his calling as like, not that you would ever want to do this, like a counselor, psychologist, like encourager. Like he has so much wisdom and insight and knowledge that like
zero training.
Zero training and schooling. Dan has maybe like 3 college classes under his belt. Maybe 8 credits.
Yeah, something like that.
But you've been to like Bible school or like discipleship programs. Like you have so much knowledge, just like random knowledge in the world, but then also on a spiritual side of things. Like you're very knowledgeable on the Bible and just like the things of the Lord and like different religions. And I don't know, anytime someone needs encouragement or like insight, I'm like, call Dan up because he's got you.
No insurance does not cover that.
We're cash pay only over here. No, but in talking today, I wanted to kind of address surrogacy and Christianity. There's so much over the past couple years, the past year for sure, that has just gone on about surrogacy and Christianity, whether it's like with what the Pope said or stuff with the Kardashians and Kim agreeing with surrogacy and Khloe looking down upon it as more of a transactional thing. I just feel like I wanted to talk through it a little bit and talk through like as Christians how we came to the decision to become a surrogate. We get questions on how does our pastors feel about us doing it? How do we feel that it's okay? And so like we'll give some biblical insight, but then at the end of the day, like we don't have all the answers. Like whenever I get asked questions, I always say that I'm making the decision based off of like what we have to go off of, like us praying and talking to the Lord, the Holy Spirit's leading in our life, what we feel at peace about, and we move forward. But that's not the same for everybody. We'll just share like our side of things. If it's helpful, great. And if not, you can exit on this video or unfollow us. I don't know.
Whoa, you're going extreme. Unfollow.
I mean,
boom.
No, honestly, don't unfollow, because I really feel like there's several people I follow that there's certain things I don't agree on in their life, but I still feel like I can take good from them, like whether it's insight or just advice, or sometimes not advice, depending on like what you follow them for. Just like fun inspiration where you may not have the same beliefs, but you still love the person.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So
makes sense.
I want to briefly touch on like the transactional side of surrogacy. On like when Khloe, she had this clip where she was sitting down with Kim and it was Courtney, and she was talking about how she felt like surrogacy, she didn't like it. She felt it was very transactional. She felt bad for the surrogate because the baby that she just carried was ripped away from her. And on a surrogate's side of things, that's what we signed up for. We knew the baby in us wasn't for us. We knew that baby wasn't ours, that we weren't taking the baby home. That yeah, there are times where your body doesn't understand what's going on. Your body doesn't know that the child inside of you isn't yours, like psychologically and like physically, but you're still going through it and you still have those emotions and those hormones. And so you may feel a certain way, but at the end of the day, we knew going into a journey that that was the whole point, was to give their baby back to them. And so I appreciate her compassion for her surrogate and her care of wanting to make sure she's cared for and that she was looked after and taken care of despite having this child just taken from her. But again, at the end of the day, like we know that that's the whole point of it, you know?
I feel like with surrogacy, a lot of it comes down to your mindset going through it and preparing for it and
on both sides, into
what you want out of it. You know, because I'm not saying that if you get paid, you can't get something more out of it, or I'm not saying that you do get more out of it if you don't get paid. But when you go through surrogacy, people have different reasons for it. And you can enter into a contract, you can enter into a relationship with the intended parents or the surrogate with a mutual understanding of, hey, we want to use you know, Sam's body to bless somebody with a baby, right? Mm-hmm. And that's where it all came from for us. Is you approached me, you were like, hey, I really did love being pregnant. I loved labor and delivery, which is just weird. But, you know, I feel like we're done as a family. Yeah. And I feel like I could continue to use my body to help bring biological children for couples into this world. And that's really why we dove into it. And throughout that whole like conversation experience, walking through that together, we decided what we wanted out of a relationship. We, from the get-go, didn't want it to be transactional. You know, it wasn't like, hey, Sam is basically a puppy factory for babies, and we're just gonna like...
Which is why we didn't match with intended parents in a different country, because we wanted to have that relationship with them. This journey is a part of our life. We care for this child. We pray for this child. We're emotionally invested in this child's life. Although they're not ours, it wasn't this just, okay, let me have a baby and be done with it. And
that's why we spent so much time in the matching process, trying to find the right couple, ones that we viewed a lot of things the same. We had the same beliefs, we had the same mindset going into it, same desires throughout the pregnancy and delivery and after. And we put a lot of time into that because we did desire it to be a relational thing and not a transactional thing.
Yeah. And on the transaction side, like with Chloe, and I don't know her full story of like that season of her life that she was in before having her baby through surrogacy. But to the best of my knowledge, the child that was about to be born through surrogacy was with her ex-husband, who then cheated on her or was with another woman. So the baby she was about to have was a child with a man she's no longer with. So I think that plays into how she felt and how she probably handled the journey. And being a Kardashian, your life is crazy and busy, and I can't imagine that she could be or was available to be really present with her surrogate. And if she was, awesome, then she did everything in her power to stay close and connected with her surrogate. But even with our intended parents right now being in Florida, and we see them, you know, every other month or every few weeks or whatever, and we have that closeness, it's still hard for them because they're still away. They're not under the same roof as their child. And so I could see if the more you are disconnected from a journey, the more you are farther away from your surrogate and not in daily contact with them, that it can feel quote unquote transactional. It can feel very like, oh, you get pregnant, oh, here's the baby and we're done type of thing. But I don't know, again, I can't speak for Chloe and if she did this, but I feel like as an intended parent, if you put in every effort you can to be with your surrogate, to be connected to your surrogate, to be invested in the journey, to be as close as you can, then it will feel less transactional. And so with what she had going on in her personal life mixed with her busy work life, I feel like those two things heavily played into her feeling that it was transactional. That doesn't have to be the case. Yes, it happens. I feel like I'm not an intended parent. I can't speak fully, but from what I can imagine, the more time and investment and close you're able to be with your surrogate, the closer you'll feel after delivery and the less like removed you'll feel, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I think that throughout all of it, you know, going into it, you can set some of that up. Like, hey, we want to be very involved throughout the process. But I also think that with every relationship, it can be difficult to kind of invite a new person into your life that you may not have known before.
It's hard for them too, because like for intended parents, some of them are just now sitting in the fact that they can't carry their own baby, and so it's hard for them to walk through that, and so they want to retreat. They don't want to be close because it's hard for them to see another woman pregnant with their baby, and so I get that. But on our side as surrogates, like, I want to do everything I can to make it feel as real and as in the moment for them. And so that's why, like, we want to be close with Jake and Kenzie. We want to go over to their house as much as possible. I want them to feel my belly. I want them to hear the baby's heart rate and like be as involved in their child's life in the womb as possible. I tap my bracelet when the baby moves. You know, I tapped it when I was cramping or when my boobs were sore because I wanted them to feel and be a part of every moment possible, to have that be like as much of their journey and as real as it could feel for them despite them not caring.
Yeah, I think that throughout the whole thing, you know, staying connected, that's going to limit the transactional thing. But honestly, on the Christianity standpoint, because we do have a lot of people that ask about that. They ask like, oh, what does your pastor say? I mean, the Pope said this, and there's probably going to be people who don't like this statement. I don't really put a whole lot of stake in what the Pope says. Like, that dude has no effect on my daily life.
I thought you were going to say you don't care what other people think. I was like, that's you.
Well, it's not that I don't care what other people think, but like, there's certain viewpoints that people have. Like, there's closed-handed issues and open-handed issues with everything, but definitely with Christianity and spirituality, because people think, oh, this religious leader said this. That is like gospel truth. Well, no, gospel truth is in the Bible and came from the mouth of Jesus and through the people he appointed to write the Bible. Another guy 2,000 years later who just gets to wear the hat literally for his lifetime, and then it gets passed to somebody else. That's not doctrine. That's not what God has commanded for everybody to do. And I honestly don't even know all of the things that the Pope said about surrogacy.
It just wasn't right. And I think he mainly pressed on to be like compensated as a surrogate, or just like surrogacy shouldn't be okay.
So because there's money involved,
I think so, that,
or monetary benefit involved, then okay.
I can't remember.
For me, that's a really difficult thing. Like, when people bring up money and they're like, oh, because of money, now it's bad. No, God created transaction with things, and it's not that it has to be that way. I mean, people can do things out of the kindness of their heart. They can do things because they felt the Lord leading them to, in our case. And to say that because there's financial benefit makes it wrong, I think is just a ridiculous statement or a ridiculous belief system. Because if that were the case, Pope Francis wouldn't be able to eat food or live in the Vatican because of his service to the Lord. Now he's being compensated. Like, at what point do you draw the line? Oh, when it benefits me, it's okay to receive some type of financial benefit, but when it's for somebody else, you can't. That whole mindset doesn't make sense to me. So,
and the whole thing, which this is aside from what the Pope said, but just in general, a lot of people are speaking against surrogacy because of the financial profit from it. Well, the surrogate financially profiting is the pain and suffering she's going through for the year. The IVF companies, the doctors, the fertility clinics, the everything, yes, they're profiting, but that's a hospital. Like, you go and get cared for when you're sick, and you're paying the hospitals for profit. Like,
that's just literally everything. I mean,
that it's not like I feel like it's looked at almost like selling these children into slavery type of thing.
But at the end of the day, you're not paying for your child. You're not saying, hey, I'm going to give you this much money for my kid. What it is, it's saying, hey, we understand that on a surrogate, this is difficult. It takes a lot of time. You're traveling to and from appointments. You're getting injections every night for a couple months. Like, this is a difficult process. And so for your work and your energy that you've put into it, here's compensation. Because you're right, a lot of people wouldn't do it if there wasn't money involved in it. And that's just how things are today. And any job, it's the same thing. Like, if somebody said, hey, Dan, can you come build a deck for me? And I'm like, you know what? The Lord's calling on my life is to be a deck builder, which means I cannot take any financial compensation for it. No, that's not accurate, because I have to provide for my family, and that's a way that the Lord provides for his people, is through the skills that they have to earn money, to bring food home, to pay rent, to pay for medical, to have gas in their vehicles. Like, everything is transactional to some degree. Every relationship that you guys are a part of, that these people who are critics of surrogacy are a part of, is transactional. It might not be financially, but it makes you feel better. And so that's your form of income, or like, that is their investment into your life, is, oh, I feel good being around them. I want to be around them more. What do I have to do? Oh, well, maybe I have to take them out for lunch and hang out, or pay for a round of golf for my buddy. And it's a transactional thing. And so to just say transactional things are bad, anybody living or that has ever lived has been part of transactions. Transactions are not bad. They don't make things evil. They don't make things against the Lord's will. God has allowed culture to design different things for people's benefit. I fully believe that those are ways that the Lord provides for his people. And so, as far as the transactional side of things with surrogacy, That doesn't make it non-Christian. It doesn't make it go against our beliefs just because there might be compensation or may not be compensation.
I mean, it's mainly the, like, as a Christian, how do you feel okay being a surrogate? And, like, going back to the close-handed and the open-handed matters of, like, dealing with them and, like, what's in the Bible, what's right, what's wrong, what can we do, what can't we do type of thing. It's like those close-handed things: do not murder, do not commit adultery, do not steal. Like, there's things in the Bible that the Lord commands us to do and to not to do. And that is, like, matter of fact, that's set in stone. Those are, like, close-handed matters. Those aren't up for debate, aren't up for question. And those are commandments that we are to abide by.
Well, and I've heard comments of, well, look at Hagar in the Bible. She was a surrogate, and look how that turned out. Okay, but just because it turned out poorly for one person doesn't mean that God can't use it for good in a different situation. Like, was it because of a lack of faith on Abraham's part that whole thing played out? Yeah, but also the Lord and his purposes and his will for his people, for creation, for history and eternity gets worked out no matter what. And I don't think that because of one instance in the Bible that people pull out and they go, look, this ended poorly. If that were the case, nobody should have two sons, because look at Cain and Abel. One of them murdered the other one. So that happened in the Bible, so you better not have two boys. No, that's ridiculous. You can't just pick and choose and say, hey, because there was a bad outcome in this situation, nobody should be involved in this. Every child is valuable to God. Every life is valuable to God. And we believe that this baby that's in Sam's belly and the one that she's carried before, and we believe that our children are children of God. I mean, they are created in his image. Is it because maybe they were formed in a petri dish and put in a freezer for a little while and then made it into her that they're not? No, absolutely not. We believe that all human life is valuable. And so because of a way that it's conceived, it doesn't determine the outcome, the eternal significance. It doesn't determine the value or the change, the good that could come from that life. I mean, the fact that anybody would say you can't be a Christian and a surrogate just kind of blows my mind, and I feel like it limits their view of who God is and what God can do and who Jesus is. At the end of the day, the Bible talks about how you will know that you're a follower of mine. It talks about the greatest commandments: love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. It doesn't say also only have your own biological children. Like, people just add things in and they make it crazy.
Well, it means, like, we're all entitled to our own opinions and beliefs, and that's, you know, the Pope, it's like he's going to sprinkle his own opinion and his own knowledge at his ripe age of whatever. That, yeah, like, we have in the Bible what we learn and what the Lord tells us, but we're all going to have our own opinions in there, and so they're going to throw those in there.
Yeah.
And on, like, the Hagar subject, it was like people look at that story and Abraham slept with her, like, in surrogacy.
Listen, nobody's getting a piece of this, okay? I'm just telling you right now.
I'm not sleeping with someone. I'm not committing adultery, which Abraham married Hagar. I was like, Dan, refresh me on the story, because I don't know. I don't remember.
But also, like, if you actually go back and you look at biblical times and the structure of the family unit and the structure of civilization and leaders being able to marry other people, in fact, all throughout history, like, siblings, royal siblings were marrying each other or sleeping with each other to conserve bloodlines. And so to apply culture from back then to right now doesn't make sense, but you also have to read the scriptures with that in mind, how things were back then. If your wife could not produce a baby for you, then you could go outside of your marriage. Or the same thing, if your brother dies and he didn't have a son to carry on your family line, then you were to be the one to do that. There's so many different things in the Bible that were cultural at the time and that made sense to the people at the time.
But that we don't do now.
That right now we're like, what the heck? This is really, really messed up. But yeah, throughout all of it, like, we're strong in our faith. We believe that God has put us in this position. He has put us in this relationship. He has allowed Sam to have healthy natural pregnancies and labors and deliveries, and we're going to use it for his good, just like we do everything as unto the Lord.
Yeah.
And the only other thing I'll say about the Bible is like, the Bible says that they will know that you are followers of me by the way you love one another, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't say by the way you carry a baby, or by the way you have your unnatural children, or any of those things. And so if we're loving the Lord, if we're loving his people, that's what he commands of us. Like, you don't get a ticket to heaven by only adopting children. You don't get a ticket to heaven by only carrying your biological kids.
Yeah. I feel like that's nowadays the tough thing about religion is a lot of people get hung up on all these, like, should women be pastors or only men be pastors? Should surrogacy be allowed? Is adoption okay? Is not, like, all these matters that I feel like eternally don't really matter. Like, it's about your relationship with the Lord, and instead of religion, like, focus on the relationship, because there's so many different beliefs and religions that deciding which one's right or which one should we abide by. At the end of the day, like, it's your relationship with the Lord. It's accepting him into your heart, and it's, like Dan said, loving God and loving others and living out that relationship with him. And with surrogacy being with, like, how can Christians be surrogates and how is surrogacy pro-life? Because a lot of people say, well, surrogacy isn't pro-life. And as a whole, because of the embryo creation process and the discarding of embryos and stuff, yes, it could be looked at as a very non-pro-life thing. And that's something Dan and I had to talk about. Like, we had to talk about, okay, going into this, what are the things that we're going to be asked to do that we are not going to be okay with, that ourselves we don't want to be okay with, but biblically we're not okay with. And that was decisions that we had to make. Was we desired a husband and wife couple. We wanted to match with a woman and a man and help them have a child. When it comes to carrying the embryo, we didn't have any say in the embryo creation process. And so on that side of things, although there's discarding of embryos and stuff like that, that's something that we didn't have to deal with. And if that was, you deal with the Lord on that and let him lead you on how to go about it, because I haven't even begun to pray about that and research that, because that's not something that we've had to do.
Well, at the end of the day, we're accountable to the Lord.
For our actions.
For our actions.
Yes.
And so
you always say too, like in the kid's life and our life, you said this to me yesterday, you're in control of your actions and your response to things, not anybody else's.
Yeah. Who can you control?
Ourselves.
That's what I say. You.
Yeah.
And so we do what we know and we believe is right. And even with the embryo creation, if we can bring life to one of those embryos,
Great.
Absolutely. You know?
Yeah.
And so we have no part, and we went through in contracts and talked about termination if there were issues. And, you know, that was one of our non-negotiables, is
The life that
we
I
will
carry.
not terminate. And
every life deserves a chance, even, you know, a child who has health problems or, you know, different conditions, that it's like they're still valued and that God has a purpose for their life, and we believe that, and we want to carry that and see that through. And yeah, so we decided and we determined that from the beginning that we're accountable for us at the end of the day when I'm in heaven and I stand before the Lord, and I have to give an answer, an account for what I did with my body. And here on earth, my body is a temple for the Lord, and what I do with my body and how I use my body as a vessel for him. Like you said, we're given one life on this earth, and if I'm able to use my body for good, then praise God.
yeah.
And so our pastor is excited for us. Both of our pastors, our family, like, they love what we're doing and how we're able to share this journey and be used in this way to bless this couple, to, you know, bring life into this world. And whenever people say, like, oh, my pastor doesn't agree with it or my mom doesn't agree with it, I just say, like, let them see your heart, because automatically people are going to jump to the conclusion, because people always say, oh, how much are you getting paid for it? Like, surely you wouldn't do this if you weren't getting paid. They're just not on the same page as you. But if you let them see your heart behind why you're doing this and your reasoning, like, they're going to come to a mutual understanding, like, hey, I may not agree with you, but I support you, and, like, I'm excited for what you're doing for someone else, type of thing. And so not everyone's going to agree with you, but that's between you and the Lord. So not everyone agreed with us when we moved out to Colorado, when we moved into an RV.
When we started social media, when
Yeah.
we started RV renovations, when we decided to have kids at the age that we did. Nobody's ever going to agree with you on everything.
You are in control of you.
You're in control of you. This seems like kind of a somber
It
episode
is, but
because we're having to deal with criticisms and a bunch of conflicting viewpoints, I guess.
Yeah.
But like I'm not upset about people's viewpoints. You can have whatever viewpoints you want, but when you pull Christianity into the mix and you say you can't be a Christian and do X, Y, and Z, it saddens me. It really does. It doesn't make me angry. It's just like, it's difficult to see people with that view of Christianity, that there's a lot of do's and don'ts. You can and you cannot. There are some that are very clearly outlined in Scripture. I mean, people add things to the list of like what makes you a Christian or what qualifies you, and they shouldn't be on the list. God made a really good list already, and He's a better list maker than you. He's the best list maker.
where did that come from?
You gotta lighten it up a little bit. So, I mean, this is kind of a long episode, but in short, the answer to the question, how are you a Christian and a surrogate? It really breaks down and boils down to this. You're saved by grace through faith in Jesus, and you're pregnant with somebody else's baby. Christian surrogate.